So hi, hello to all our fifth years in St Andrews. Stuart Wilson here from ZestLife Therapeutic Services here in Churchtown and in Harold's Cross. It's my delight to connect with you all today, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an idea of what we're going to cover today. So hopefully, most importantly, you're starting into the year in an exciting way, definitely a new way, because obviously there's a lot of change and it's very different probably to what we all expected towards the tail end of last year. So welcome to fifth year. I'm going to talk with you, if it's okay, for about an hour. I'm going to try and make this as interesting and not boring as is possible. So forgive me if there's any parts of this that are a little bit daunting to stick with, but I promise you I'll do my best to try and make it interesting for you. So by way of starting us off, I'm hoping that I'm going to share my screen with you now and it's all going to work and technology is going to be good. I'm going to give you a little bit of an idea of what we're going to do today, and also a little bit of an idea as to who am I and why am I speaking to you today and annoying you from the distance. So I hope this will make sense as we go. And by way of starting us off, I hope now you're seeing our welcome. So welcome to everybody. Yeah, definitely a different year. I think starting into fifth year this year is going to have a little bit more, in some ways, difference in doing things, the way you're doing things, but also difference in how we're approaching this year, and potentially just times where it might be a little bit anxious, or it might be just a little bit different in the way that we thought things would be. So by way of starting us off, if it's okay, I'm just going to explain to you who I am and what I do. But probably one of the most important things for me to tell you about is probably where I get a lot of my learning, which is in my own kind of family unit back home. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today as well. My background is working in therapeutic services with young people and families, and I have two practices, one in Churchtown in Dublin and the other in Harold's Cross near the city centre in Dublin. And I love working with young people. I have two areas of involvement. One is therapeutically working here in Dublin and also working overseas with a children's charity that I set up. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go on, if that's okay. So please buckle up, relax, put your feet up. Feel free to stop and start this as you go, but I'd love for us to work it through together over today, just to get a little bit of an idea how I feel. I hope that some of what we talk about will help you in the coming year ahead. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to my crew. The good-looking guy on the right-hand side is me. That's my lovely wife beside me. Her name is Maggie. We're married now for 147 years. Although that's just what she says it feels like. Maggie's an extraordinary woman. She's also a therapist, but I met Maggie 147 years ago. And actually from the day I met Maggie to the day I married her was only 4 months. And I know, that sounds a little bit crazy. But now looking back over it, I can't believe I waited that long to marry her. She's an extraordinary woman, and I'm very blessed to have her as my wife. Yeah, that's exactly what she told me to say, I think. So without further ado, my son in the background, now that's my son Cian. He's 24 years of age now. That was taken out of Debs a few years ago because it's actually really difficult to get a photograph of him ever. So he's horrified the fact that I even show these photographs. He doesn't come down for breakfast dressed like that. He happened to be going to a Debs. He doesn't ask for his cornflakes shaken, not stirred. Anyway, he's now an accountant and I'm very proud of him. And being the only man in the house, he assists me to keep my sanity from time to time. So we're good in that respect. I'll talk to you a little bit about Katie later on, Kate, and I will talk to you a little bit about her journey because it's been an interesting one as well. Kelly Jo is my daughter who's 16 years of age. She's just gone into fifth year. She's in the high school in Rathgar, where I also went to school. Don't say anything. Where I also went to school. I have spent many years traumatized by St Andrews because I have been on the side of hockey pitches, basketball courts, and you name it, watching you guys beating mostly high school in a variety of different sports. So I'm traumatized by that. Anyway, I'll get over it. But Kelly Jo's in fifth year in high school. KJ, we call her, is my, I can remember when she was about 3 or 4 years of age, bursting into our front room of our house going, "Mommy, Daddy, you're gorgeous and amazing." And that's actually sums Kelly Jo up. She's wonderful. She's theatrical. She's dramatic in the most beautiful ways. She's such a creative. She's really interested in interior design. Very proud of her. And she's just turned 17 recently. Georgia, who is my daughter tucked away under our arms there in the background, is 13 years of age. She's just started first year in the high school. And Georgia, my wife tells me Georgia is actually very like me. She tends to do things at 100 miles an hour. Everything is done fast. and she will love you quickly, and she'll drop kick you quickly if she doesn't feel loved by you. And I mean that in the most gorgeous way. Georgia kind of does things so fast that even when she's gone up the stairs in our house, that it's almost done at 1,000,000 miles an hour. You know, there's a kind of a footprint in the front door that she uses as leverage to get up the stairs quickly, to get out and see her friends. She's incredibly sociable. We say she's either going to solve all the problems of the world really quickly or potentially create them. I'm not sure which, but I know it'll be the former, not the latter. Tamara, I'll tell you a bit about. Tammy's my youngest. Tamara is, again, kind of in the theatrical and dramatic and performance department. She's slightly addicted to TikTok currently. I'm working on it. I know. Over COVID, in fact, I think with Tamara's ability to consistently run TikToks, I think I nearly appeared in about 3 of them, and I was actually just going to get a drink of water or going to the bathroom or something, because she was consistently running these TikTok videos and performing in them. She is very performance based, so much so that actually recently she slightly worried me. She came to me not so long ago and said to me that you know, she's my youngest, so I don't want to even correct her because it's just kind of cute. So when she makes a mistake in her English, I'll just let it go because it's so cute. If I could freeze her, I know it's illegal, but if I could freeze her, I probably would, because she's just so cute. I actually don't even want her to grow up. Being my youngest and definitely my last, you can understand why. So Tamara has nicknames. Now, this is the bit where the guys watching out here, please don't judge me. I'm going to share with you these nicknames that I call my youngest daughter, and you'll get there one day yourself and you'll do the same. For the girls in the group, you're probably going to think this is sort of cute, but for the guys, you're going to just really think I'm pathetic right now. Anyway, Tamara, being her name, is shortened regularly to Tam Tam. I know, that's not so bad. It's kind of cute. A few other little ones that are a little bit strange in some ways, but my Tamster, yeah, I know. Stop it, guys. I said stop it. Tamster, and then my final one, which is the one that I love the most and she has trouble with, but it's my Tamalama Ding Dong. I know. Let it go, guys. So Tammy is so cute. So you can imagine my distaste, my difficulty, and my upset recently when she came to me and she said this beautiful name that she had and all these gorgeous nicknames. She said that she didn't want to be known as Tamara anymore. And I was quite disturbed by that. And I said, what do you mean? Thinking to myself, she'd come up with another name, like a princess name, like Belle, or, you know, something like that. And she said to me, Dad, I don't want to be called Tamara anymore. I want to be known as Gur. I'll say it again, Gur. Now, my reaction to that was probably one of complete and total shock. I don't know about you, but running around little, shouting "Grr" or screaming out the front door, "Grr, your dinner is ready," didn't really resonate or stick with me too well. I was concerned by it. I thought, oh my gosh, what have I done to my daughter? And I realized that it was connected into this whole TikTok thing. And I asked her, why do you want to be known as Grr? What's the reason for it? And she said, Dad, it's short for GR, it's short for gangster rapper. And that's what I want to be known as from here on in. So that's my daughter, Gur. And in case you think that I'm joking with you, this is Gur, the artist formerly known as Tammy. This is Gur currently. So if you do happen to bump into me and I'm wandering through Tesco's or something, and you hear a guy in the background screaming Gur, don't judge me and maybe just pray for me if that's okay. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about literally what I was talking to you there about with Tamara, or Gur as she's now known. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about identity, and the identity of the mark that we leave with our identity on the world around us. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. Every single one of you, including me, but every single one of you has an identity. You have a mark that you leave on the people around you. You've a fragrance, a connection, a style, if you like to call it that, which you leave on the people around you. And I suppose a question that I would ask is, what is that identity that you leave on the people around you? What is the fragrance you leave as people connect with you or meet you? Are you a pleasure to be around, or challengingly, are you difficult to be around? Now, that sounds very, very challenging. Forgive me for being that challenging this early on, but I'm very conscious leading into 5th year that you have an elevated position of authority within the school, being a 5th year, going into your senior years, that have a massive impact, huge impact on the younger people around you. We look up to our 5th years and our 6th years as first years or second years. And we like to see them in a position of kindness and authority, as opposed to authority and challenge, if that makes sense. So that's just a question for you. Maybe if you have a little journal beside you, and it would be great if you did, that you just maybe tip down a few notes that you're thinking as we go along with this, if that's okay. So what is the identity that you leave, or the mark that you leave on the people around you? What would the teachers say about you? What would your staff say about you? What would be the fragrance that you leave around them? And again, just a question to be able to look at ourselves and see, yeah, that's actually an interesting question. I wonder what that is. Because I believe our identity, who our identity basically is who we are as a person. And I don't mean how we perform on the hockey field or the rugby field. I mean more about the identity of the character of who you are. What's your character made up of? Who are you? Who am I? And it's not what other people say I am. That's one of the most important things. I remember when one of my children was starting in first year for the first time, one of the things that they said to me was, Dad, it's really important to fit in really fast. And when I challenged that and said, what do you mean? They said, because if you don't fit in quick, in other words, change who you are to be accepted by others. If you don't fit in really, really quickly, you're on the outside. You're on the almost potential to be bullied because you're not in the crew or the gang or the clique. And I felt very challenged by that, because I actually remember saying to my young person at the time, gosh, I really hope that's not the case. In other words, I nearly hope you don't fit in. Bear with me for a second. I really hope you don't fit in, because I hope you encourage more of who you are, as opposed to change who you are to fit in with other people's thoughts or determinations of what you should be. Am I determined to be myself, or am I changing who I am to meet other people's expectations? Because that can become, if we're not careful, a life habit where we meet other people's expectations or become a people pleaser to try and keep connection with people. And truthfully, the more and more we can be at our best, the more and more we can be ourselves, is important, because therefore we connect with other people from that place, not trying to create an identity we think other people would like to see in us. So I suppose I want to encourage us all, starting in fifth year this year, that we are approaching fifth year like this, because your senior years are really your character years, and from character comes behaviors or behavioral traits that determine your connections, your friendships, quite frankly, for many, many years to come. And how we do fifth year has a big impact on our future relationships. And also it's a balance, because in fifth year we tend to be challenging some of our relationships, even our parental ones or siblings, etc., to be more and more of what we want, and that can be challenging. So we even want to connect more with our peers and connections at school, if that makes sense. So I just want to challenge us, but also encourage us. There's only one of you. Don't be someone else. You be you, because no one else can do you as well as you. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Anyway, that's my encouragement to you today. Approach this year being you. Don't approach this year but trying to change who you are so that other people will be happy with you. I want to talk to you a little bit, if it's okay. This children's charity that I mentioned to you earlier on is called Zest for Kids. It's a voluntary organization. It's a tiny little charity, but it's something that's very close to my heart. We work in three main areas overseas with children who were formerly child soldiers in Uganda, but are also potentially disabled or in difficulty. We built a children's hospital over there to assist kids in these areas for surgeries. I have learned so much about myself through our work over there. I've learned so much about what I desire in my values as a father and as a husband in my work over there. We also work in India with children who unfortunately have been victims of trafficking. We work in Eastern Europe as well with children who are caught up in the children's prison system and orphanage system. And again, this work, I thought I was bringing something of me to all of these places. In fact, I learned more and more about who I am from the connections I've made in these places. And quite frankly, it transformed my life into a good space and brought me to a point where I questioned a lot of things about my life that I decided to make changes into, which has been really beneficial and good for me. So I'm going to ask you in a roundabout way today, will we take 10 seconds to change someone's day? Now, why am I saying that? Let me explain a couple of things. So I have a clinic here. I'm in my Churchtown office right now. I have a clinic here, and probably about 5 or 6 years ago, a young lady came to see me for the first time. She was about 14 years of age, and she was communicating with me. She had come to me. I knew she was coming to me because she had been bullied from a school. She was in an all-girls school, and 3 girls were regularly attacking her. They were hurting her, they were pulling her hair, they were fighting with her, but they were also being just incredibly rude, and then at times very dismissive. And she was having a really, really tough time. And this really tough time, solo, it was getting dangerous. And I got to see her, got to ask her about all the things that was happening for her, to try and support her and care for her and just encourage her. And So interesting, because a few days later, maybe mostly a week later, or at most a week later, she came back to see me, and she was sitting in the waiting room in my premises here. And when I went out, I saw her with a smile on her face, which I was delighted to see, but confused by as well, because I knew it was being really, really tough for her. She shared with me that I was like, what's put the smile on your face? What's happened? And she shared with me that something had happened in school. One of the three girls, not the leader of the three, but one of the three girls who had been bullying her, she went to the locker area, and she was used to being, looking over and then being bullied or them making comments. She looked over at the girl who had previously been one of the bullies. She was on her own, but the girl was looking at her. And this girl, who I know, said to me when she was with me, I had to make a decision then, Stewie. Everyone calls me Stewie, by the way. She said, I had to make a decision, Stewie, as to what to do. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I had to decide whether or not I was going to be brave. And I said, what do you mean decide whether or not you had to be brave? And she said, well, I had to decide whether or not I was going to smile at her. And I said, why? And she said, because usually when I would smile at her, that's the time when they would then come back with, who do you think you are smiling at us? Or it would lead to an upset or lead to a fight. So I decided to be courageous. And I said, really? What happened? And she said, she looked around, and then she walked over to me and she apologized to me. She said, I'm really sorry for being part of this bullying thing, but I'm terrified of this girl. And if I feel that if I'm kind to you, she's going to bully me too. But I'm not going to be mean to you anymore. And if she's bullying you or she's doing anything, I'm not going to be with her. And I just wanted to say, I'm really sorry. Now, when I was hearing this, I was almost sort of saying, my goodness, that's amazing. And have you met up here, your friends or anything? And she said, no, none of that at all. And I said, so what's different? And she said, oh, it's completely changed everything. And I said, why? She said, now I have hope. When I heard that, it really resonated with me. It hit me at a heart level. And I said, wow, so what are you saying? She said, I can go into school. Because I know that when she looks at me, she's looking at me with a smile. Even though the other girls were still difficult, I feel like I can manage it more now. I feel like I can deal with it more now. I can stand up for myself more now, or I can ask for help and support more now. But she said, but I'm okay. And I said, so hope brought you that? And she said, that was it. And I realized that it only takes about 10 seconds to change somebody's day. That tiny interaction took no more than 10 seconds, had a massive impact on that young lady, where she was able to not only get out of the dangerous place that she was in, but to be able to deal with it in a completely new way. And I want to tell you a story, if that's okay, about a young lady who I've connected with, which had a massive impact on me. She impacted on me in that it massively changed my life in 10 seconds. And by chance, that had a huge impact to assist her. Her name is Maggie. I met her when she was 9 years of age. We were going to a place in northern Uganda, which was a school quite out in the kind of rural areas. And a pal of mine and I were traveling to speak at the school. And typically we would arrive to the school and we'd speak to the entire school, teachers and such included. And we would then kind of do a needs audit on the school to see what was it that they needed, what were their requirements. And sometimes it might be building, sometimes it might be food, sometimes it might be vaccines or things, but depending on what the needs were at the schools, we'd try and assist them as best that we could. Sometimes some of the children needed surgeries. And in fact, that's where our understanding of building the hospital came from, because we saw kids with huge needs who were disabled. And most kids in Uganda who are disabled are literally left out of the education system and never educated. And even worse, in some cases, not looked after, not fed, because they're seen as being a waste. So we decided to build a hospital on the back of that. But this young girl, Maggie, was sitting out under a mango tree, about maybe 300 or so feet from the school that everyone else was in. So before we went into the school, I said to my friend, his name is Rob, I said, Rob, let's go over and see this girl. And we went over, and as we got closer, we realized she was with her mother. And as well as that, we discovered very quickly she had this all over disease. Wasn't sure what it was, but it covered her entire body, where it was almost like hard crusts on her skin. We didn't know what it was, but her mother explained to us that she'd had it. We thought, how long have you been out here? A few weeks, and this must be difficult, because she had a chalkboard. So she was doing her work from the school, and it was going back in to be corrected and then brought back out on a chalkboard, because they wouldn't let her into the school because they didn't know what she had, and they're obviously afraid that it was contagious. So I could understand the reasons for it, but I asked Maggie, what's the worst part of this? Is it, not being able to keep up with your work, or is that? And she said, no, it's the isolation, because my friends wave at me as they go home, and I can't talk with them. I can't be near them. And if you think of that, even now from COVID and stigma around that, how difficult life is for her, but also the impact that it has on our people here in Ireland. So after a little while, I just asked her mum, is there anything we can do? Her mum was a really faith-based woman. She said, oh, you could pray for us. And I was like, wow, all she's asking us for is prayer, not even to help or anything, you know? So we decided that, obviously we prayed with her mum and dad. We had a lovely time with her mum, I should say. We had a lovely time with her mum, and Rob and I spent time with them. And we also said, listen, would it be okay if we tried to, make a call or two to see if there's anything we could do to assist Maggie and just to try and see what happened. She'd been turned away from hospital. She hadn't even been treated because she'd no money to pay for any kind of treatment. So it turned out I made one phone call. The phone call I made was to a doctor who lived not too far away, and I asked him, had he anybody who he felt would be able to assist us? It turns out that one of the best doctors that she could connect with for skin was literally located about 5 kilometers from where we were at the school. And one phone call, we had Maggie to see him very, very quickly. He was a consultant. He could make decisions and he could examine her. And it turned out that she had a very treatable disease. And it was like a form of psoriasis or eczema that had gone infected. And because it had been infected, it had gone on over her entire body. Sometimes it was so hard to walk the 5 kilometers to school every day because the skin on her knees and her elbows would break and would bleed. This was her with her mom, and as time went by, she showed us this all over her back. We had permission to show these photographs, but it was over her entire body, and that was Maggie literally just 3 months later. Now, the reason I'm showing you this from this to this is that took 10 seconds. It was a 10-second interaction when we first initially met her. It was a 10-second communication on the phone to a doctor. It was a really short communication with the doctor of an assessment, and all of a sudden a beautiful young girl became free of this disease that she had had previously. This also had a massive impact on myself and Rob, because we looked at Maggie and we thought, my goodness, how many other young people just like her are there that we could reach, that with the simplistic approach that we were taking, just to be able to get them the surgeries that they need or the assessments that they need, how many more could we reach? 10 seconds massively impacted them, but it also impacted us. It was when we made the decision that we wanted to build a hospital to be able to help children. Our dream, our absolute dream, and this is a process, but our absolute dream was to be able to help 10 children a year just like that. And I'm thrilled to be able to say that now we opened the doors of the hospital in March 2016, and now every single year we assist 100 children for surgeries to assist them in most cases where they couldn't walk due to deformities or due to any kind of orthopedic difficulties. Now they can walk. 10 seconds has a major impact. I want to talk, if it's okay, a little bit about what is it that we want out of fifth year this year? Why am I talking about this? Why is it good to help somebody? Is that the message I'm trying to give? And yeah, that's nice, but not really. I'm asking us to realize that the impact that we have on other people doesn't take long. And it doesn't take a lot of time out of your day. Most of the time people say, I can't help somebody else because I haven't got the time. I want to challenge that to all of us. We all have 10 seconds. You have 10 seconds, I have 10 seconds. We can all do it. And here's what I discovered. I was watching a movie recently. If you get an opportunity to do this over the next little while, please do. The movie is on Netflix, I believe, and also I think it's simply called Happiness. Just check it out on Netflix, or you can Google it and check it out. But it talks about the science of happiness. This is science-backed. It's not just a thought process, it's science-backed. And it asks about the science of happiness and what is it? What is it that actually makes us happy? Okay, so therefore, what will make us happy in fifth year this year as we look into the year? And I want to suggest a few things if that's okay with you guys. The beginning of this is the science of happiness is not what we probably thought it would be. It's not exactly what we thought it should be. And that is usually this. We look at extrinsic, it's not an easy word to say, is it? Extrinsic goals as being things that would make us happy. And they're usually things where we say things like, well, money will make me happy. When I get that new car, I'm going to be happy. When I get that new motorbike, things are going to be great. That jet ski I've been after, my goodness, when I get that, oh man, I'm going to be happy. We think that when we have a certain amount of money, that it's going to lead to us feeling fulfilled. And I'm not saying, now please don't misunderstand my message to you. I'm not saying we can't have lots of money and not be happy. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying when it's our primary focus and it's what drives us, then it's an extrinsic goal, which we will discuss in a few minutes as to whether or not it actually brings us full happiness. The second one there is image. And this is a world we live in that has completely changed since I was young, 100 years ago. Because now image is something that is in your face all the time. It wasn't in ours growing up, because the only times we saw things that were image focused wasn't on Instagram, wasn't on Snapchat. It was in magazines in Centra or such like. The reality is that image is in your face all the time, and how you look and how others perceive you to look is not just about you. It's an opinion based on a generalization, and that is, I'm going to say it straight, that is deeply dangerous. Because that tends to lean us all into looking the same, being the same, fitting in the same. Going back to what I said in the beginning about fitting in. That means we will dress the way we think other people want us to dress, or we will pout the way we think we should pout, or behave perhaps the way we think people should behave, and therefore treat people in inappropriate or wrong ways because we think that that's the way that will give us image or status. And that is that it's a bit like somebody said to me recently, treating girls tough, as a guy is what girls like. And I would fundamentally disagree with that. And I think it goes against the general, but I think it goes against the grain in some cases. But actually, I think real men, I think real alpha men, I think the best of the best treat women with exceptional respect. And on the back of that, when we're being truthful and honest, as young ladies, for you who are watching this, I think it's lovely to be pursued correctly and nicely by a guy, and that they're not pursuing you for the wrong reasons. So status is incredibly important. They're the three things that this, let's call it a movie or documentary movie, talks about, called Happiness. It does some amazing interviews with a guy actually from the slums in India, where we do a lot of work, so I'm familiar with these areas. And he's a guy who has a family who he travels back to every day, having been a driver, driving a rickshaw around the slums and looking after people and bringing them to office workers to work, or giving people lifts. He lives in the slum, and therefore he's on a very, very small wage. He's doesn't have wealth. He doesn't have it, particularly from the point of view of huge image in the world he lives in. And I suppose status is something that's difficult for him to achieve, because it's not in the traditional sense what we probably think status should be. But this guy is exceptionally happy, and when they interview him, he's just he whistles to work. He's happy going out in the morning time. He does a couple of things that blow me away as well. He gives lifts to people who can't afford it. So he's actually giving of himself rather than just earning. He's giving of himself, some of his time, to help people who need to be helped. What it focuses on is intrinsic goals or potentials. Intrinsic, not extrinsic, but intrinsic. And it comes up with these three things, and it interviews lots of people, but it goes with these three things that actually make people happy. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't have these things and these things. It means that if these things are your primary focus, money, image, status, then it's difficult to get these things. Whereas if you work from an intrinsic perspective and have these things, then these things may come. They certainly may come, but they're not your primary focus. They couldn't come secondary, if that makes sense. So what drives us is from a set of values that incorporates these. And the first is the desire to help others. I can only talk from my own professional context, but also personal context. I can't tell you the difference in my life at around 27, 28 years of age. I had a background in playing a lot of rugby, blessed to play some representative rugby for Leinster, loved my sports, loved my cricket and athletics. But my life completely changed when I started to do some of the trips that I've mentioned to you over to different countries to be able to assist and help younger people and kids in particular. It had a huge impact on me, because telling stories to kids, where normally I would have been nervous doing something like that, but telling stories to kids in an orphanage or something, and being comfortable and happy to make a fool of myself by being a monkey jumping around the place or something, because that's what the story required, got past my fears. And once I embraced courage, got past my fears and connected into love when you heard the love of kids laughing and loving your stories or loving having fun, that desire to help others changed my life massively and actually changed my entire direction in life from business more into the therapeutic world. But that desire to help other people is a desire that's inbuilt in all of us. We are at our best when what we do helps other people, whether that's a career path or whether that's just an attitude to life, whether that's just holding a door, whether that's assisting somebody whose bag opens up and falls out over the floor, whereas normally some people might gather around and laugh at that. Some people might bend down and help that young person to put their stuff back in their bag. Desire to help others is immensely strong, and it's an intrinsic goal, let's call it, but also an intrinsic attitude and behavioral pattern that brings us peace and joy and contentment. The personal growth one is interesting because I think when you start to desire to help other people, you are personally growing. When I mean personal growth, I don't mean like I did all the way through COVID, personally growing bigger just from eating so much. I mean personal growth in making the decision that, in 5 years' time, I want to be a better version of me. And truthfully, what I want to be is obviously better in my profession, and also better as a dad, better as a husband. I want to be better than I am now. And I will personally grow and challenge myself in my behaviors, or I'll ask my wife to tell me what those behaviors are so I can change them. I will purposefully set out to try and personally grow. And I'm not talking in a glossy, fluffy way. I mean it. I'm being serious about this. What behavioral patterns do I do that are not good, that I need to change? Or what is it about me that upsets my family? Or what is it about me that upsets my wife? So that I can change those things. Because here's what happens. The absolute strength of intrinsic goals is relationships. If we do the first two things here, relationships absolutely strategically change. Our relationships become better, they become deeper, they become stronger. They don't become superficial, where we talk about superficial stuff at the top. How you doing? How are things going? Yeah, fine. Where we're just up there, or those kind of communications, we go deep. We go deep into relationships with people that actually matter, and we can go deep quickly. And that's the type of relationships I have now, thankfully. But those relationships are important. Somebody said to me not so long ago, and I think it's very useful, we come into this world with nothing and we leave with nothing. We only have the relationships and the key relationships with people. And that's what's incredibly important to us. And I would love for you to be somebody who really works on your relationships in general and does it simply by being more of you and being more willing to be you. Because if it's true that the success of our life is made up of the success of our relationships, which I do believe, if the success of our life is made up of the success of our relationships, then this must be true. The success of our relationships is made up by the success of our communication. And if you don't have great relationships, it's probably because you don't have great communication. And here's the good news. Everyone can change your communication. You're not just born with great communication, you can learn it. So our intrinsic main focus, and remember this statement, wherever focus goes, energy flows. Where your focus goes is in the desire to be intrinsic, to help people, to personally grow, to work and develop your relationships, may lead you into extrinsic success as well as intrinsic success, for sure. But when we do that, we have key relationships that are better. I would love fifth year for you to be a relationship building year, where you work on the connections with the people you care about. You also are in a position to work on the connections with the staff members that you connect with, because being a senior is a different ballgame than being a junior. In age and in connection and in respect, it's different. It's a time for even more connection. When we only think extrinsically, we end up extrinsically thinking of the things that aren't the primary focus. It tends to bring up beliefs about ourselves, and also sometimes fears. And belief and fears can lead us into negativity. And I want us all to be careful of that, because how that tends to play out is if we're not desiring to help other people or deciding to personally grow. Because somebody who personally is growing in themselves, if they're corrected slightly by a teacher, they're not fighting in that. They're kind of going, okay, listen, I want to hear from you. And they're willing to be able to show up. If we're not doing that, we tend to go into old patterns, perhaps, that might be negative patterns. And we tend to get into what I call the bed scenario. Let me explain. Who of you guys likes their bed? Over COVID, what happened, you all? Oh my goodness. Going to bed at that time of night and getting up at that time of the afternoon? We all we all fell into funny patterns. I remember having conversations with one of my daughters at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and saying, why are you up? And it was just, we got into such bad habits because obviously everything was kind of messed up and time became weird. So are you somebody who enjoys their bed? What I mean by bed is that if we're not careful, we slip into the acronym of bed. And also bed's a very comfortable place, but not a lot of learning comes through when we're asleep. Here's what happens. We tend to get into a blame game. And I don't want fifth year to be a year for you where we get into the blame game, where we say things. It's not my fault. It's the teacher's fault. I had a brilliant conversation with a young man not so long ago. I keep this confidential, but he was priceless. He was about 13 years of age at the time. It's gone back about 5 or 6 years, and he sat in my office. And in the early stages of us connecting, he had his hood up and his head down, and thank God we got past that and got to kind of connect a bit. But he came into me one time and he said to me, Stewie, he says, "You're not going to believe this." And I said, What is it?" He said, "I got expelled from school." I'm like, "What happened? Oh my goodness." And he said, "Oh, it wasn't my problem. It's not my fault. It was the French teacher." And I said, "Oh, really? What happened?" And he said, "Oh, she was so mean. It was ridiculous. She took it too far." And I said, "Oh, what happened?" He said, "Well, I was sitting in the back of French class and I was just having a smoke." And I said, "Pardon?" And I said, he kept going. And I went, hold on. Come back. I said, "Did you just say I was just having a smoke?" He goes, yeah, but no, I wasn't actually having a smoke. What happened was one of my friends bet me that I couldn't light up a roll-up cigarette in the back of the classroom, take 2 puffs at it, and then put it out. It was just a bet. I wasn't actually smoking." And I remember saying to him, "Oh, right. Okay. And what happened?" "I got expelled. Isn't it ridiculous? Will you ring up the school for me and fight for me?" And I was like, "Wow, man, we've a problem here. Do you not think that your teacher had a right?" Yeah, this thing called rules, had a right to report you. And therefore, because you broke the schools, there were consequences to the rules. So after a while, we had a great conversation. I'm mad about this guy. He's such a great guy, and he's gone on to be a phenomenal young man. But when we had that conversation, he was like, "Oh yeah, I think I can see what you mean now." Right. And he realized he spent a lot of his life blaming other people. And it went right back to early years for him. So we tend to do that. We tend to blame other people, or it's not my fault, it's their fault. Or I've seen some great excuses over not getting homework in. Yeah, the budgie edit and the cat at the budgie and yeah, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, blame. Here's the second one. We make excuses. And I don't know about you, but I used to be great at this, making excuses for not doing things, or making excuses for behaviors that I had, or why my bad behavior wasn't really relevant. It was because someone else did something and that's why I behaved badly. And I want to challenge us all as we're getting a little bit older. You're getting ancient now as you approach fifth year, that we need to get out of bed. We need to get away from blame. We need to get away from making excuses, and we need to get away from denial. Now, I love this picture of a lemon saying, an orange saying, "I'm a lemon." This thing of denial is, I don't need to do anything. It's not for me. No, I'm fine. Everything's grand. We need to get away from bed. We need to get out of bed, and we need to do something a little bit more responsible. And I'm going to show you this. So if you find yourself jumping into bed, that's okay. Don't go hard on yourself, but just remind yourself, this is something Stewie talked to us about. Is this what I'm doing? And if it is, let's do what we would rather do here instead. Now, I don't know if you've ever had a chance to do this, whitewater rafting. If you ever get a chance, oh my goodness, go for it. It is terrifying. And if, like me, you're a little bit afraid of water, there's something not right about sitting on an inflatable boat. In fact, something that could burst because you're wearing an earring. Do you know where I'm going with this? Doesn't feel safe to me. And the scary bit about doing this is I had a little go at this in Africa one time. Yeah, it wasn't probably a great idea. But anyway, I remember thinking to myself, I'd love to have a go at it. But all you're given is a little oar, tiny little oar, and you're giving this little helmet and then obviously your vest. And you have a decision to make, Do you sit down the front of the boat and try and steer yourself through the madness in a brave and courageous way? Or do you carry down the back of the boat like me and cry for your mammy if anything goes wrong? Here's how it starts off. And the reason I'm showing you this is because this is a little bit of a metaphor for life. Life can start off, or fifth year can start off just like this. In the calmness where you're looking around you, you're looking into the trees, or in my case, you're listening to the birds sing and the monkeys shouting and roaring from the distance. It can start off very, very calm. This is where, by the way, that I actually asked the guy who was the scout or assisting us, can I ask you a question? He goes, yes. And I said, can I just ask you, is there any crocodiles in this area? Because, where we are. And he said, I'll never forget his reaction. He said, no, there shouldn't be. Yeah, can you pick out the word there that shouldn't exist in that sentence? The word shouldn't. Now, what I was looking for was clarity, like never, as opposed to shouldn't. And he said, no, there shouldn't be, because crocodiles don't like fast moving water in particular. They tend to be in slower moving water. So it should be fine, you know. And as we got into the boats, I'm looking around me going, oh my goodness, you know, I got the only crazy crocodile who's on some sort of medication or something, who's going to go nuts, and I'll be eaten alive. But anyway, all you have is this little man in front of you on a boat. So if you happen to fall out, he gathers you and throws you across his canoe to hopefully get you down to safety. And this is how it starts off, and then that's how it becomes, because here's the metaphor for life. It gets like this. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to say to you that fifth year is not going to have, it's going to be all nice and easy like this. It's going to get like this from time to time. There's going to be crazy times. There's going to be times of great pressure, great stress. There's going to be times where you're going, I can't do this. Or you're in, you know, information overload with the amount you're taking on this year. Thankfully, you have the young brains to adapt to it, but it can feel like that. I love this picture. If you look right down at the front guy, God love him, he looks like he's having an almighty wedgie. The guy in the top, actually, I think it's very interesting, because if you look at him, it looks like he's just parachuted in, doesn't it? And he's likely to fall out of that, and the guy behind him will pick him up in the canoe. Just simply not safe. But you know what? That's life. Life is not entirely constantly safe. There's times where it gets tricky, and what we need to do when it does get tricky is to move over to what I call this, and this is picking up. Do you remember our or? See the oars they have in their hand? O-A-R, or. And the first part of that is this. Forgive me for being so direct as the way I communicate this. We don't have too long together. Let's take our head out of the sand this year, and let's say this. Let's say, this is my life, Stewie. This is my fifth year, Stewie. And I'm going to own it. It's mine. No one else's. No one can do it for me. No one can tell me what way to do it. I've got to make that decision for myself. I decide and I commit to extrinsically looking after myself this year. I decide and I commit to owning my stuff this year. I decide and I commit to getting out of bed, BED. Well, getting out of bed to come to school too, by the way, but getting out of bed, blame, excuses, denial, to fully owning this year for myself. And if I own this year, I'm not going to blame anyone else. So when it starts to go a little bit wrong because the pressure's on or the stress is building, I'm going to take ownership of this. I'm going to get the help I need. I'm going to ask for help if I need to, because asking for help is incredibly important. I work for an agency that works in mental health, and the tagline is, it's okay to not be okay, but it's incredibly okay to ask for help. So ask for help. And if you need it, you've got it. You get support units around you. Your school is great for that. You've got incredible supports, both in the care department, but also within your year heads and your form teachers. There is plenty of supports. Ask for it, because it's a year where you need it. Those, I call them simply the strategies of scaffolding around you, you know? So like you have people that at times where you feel like, oh gosh, I feel like I'm going to fall, I can't hold myself up, that you've got people who will come alongside you and help you. One of the greatest things that I ever did in my entire life was to ask for help when I needed it. And I still ask for help on an ongoing basis. So this is your life, own it. Hey, accountability, what's that mean? What I mean by accountability is that we are all accountable to someone. Ultimately, I am accountable to myself. I may be accountable to my parents, for instance, or I may be accountable to in my case now, to my wife and to my children. I want to be accountable. I want it to be okay that the people who care about me, and be careful the way that you hear this the way I mean it, if it's okay, that people who know me, people who love me, people who care about me, people who I've got a relationship with, they've got a right to speak into my life. There are people who I want them to say, Stewie, hold on a second. You're not being a good enough dad here, or you're not being a good enough husband here. You need to sort that out for yourself. I want to hear those people because I care what their opinion is. If people don't have a relationship with me, now put yourself in my shoes. If people don't have a relationship with you, if they just happen to be in your year, or they see you walking down the corridor, or they see you leaving school, they don't have a right to speak into your life. I'm going to say that one more time. People's opinions, I'll word it this way, they don't have a right to communicate into your life if they don't have a relationship with you. If they've got a relationship with you and it's a good relationship and you kind of trust them, sorry, that was a fly, and you kind of trust them, hear them, listen to them, then ask questions, or maybe ask another one or two friends as well to back it up and see, is that right? And maybe you need to make some changes because maybe it is right. And that's where you're accountable. But if they don't have a relationship with you, close these, don't hear them, don't listen to them, they don't matter. If they do have the relationship, it's important. The final one is responsibility. Why am I saying this? Responsibility is incredibly important because I think it's the kind of action part of the ownership and the accountability. So I'm going to take responsibility to make sure that I am extrinsically continuing with the same pattern in my life, with that desire to help other people, with that definite decision that I'm going to consistently personally grow, tweak myself, change myself, that the 5-year version of me that's coming is better than the version that's here right now. And hopefully the version that's here right now was better than the 5-year version before that. By the way, you can do it annually if you want to. But I'm going to take responsibility for that. And that ends at the end of this session, if that makes sense, that you're going, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And that responsibility might be that when you're having a moment like the metaphor of the whitewater rafting, where it's difficult, where there's a boulder in your path and you don't know how to get past it, that could be exams, that could be stress, that you're going, I am going to ask for help to get around this boulder. That's not a weakness. It's not a sign of vulnerability. It's a sign of vulnerability that is strength, because I'm asking for help during that. And please, please, please hear me correctly on that. That's so important to ask. So I want to encourage us. Take up your oar. Get out of bed. Stay out of bed and take up your oar. And with that oar of ownership, accountability, make this the best year yet. Make the decision that 5th year is the best year yet. Because this was what 5th year can be. It can be genuinely an amazing time. I know it's a year of a lot of information. I know it's a year where you're taking on a lot. I know it's a year that's COVID related. It's stressful, guys. It's not what it used to be. It's a little bit different. There's distancing. And be careful, because even these words of social distancing, I detest those words. Yes, we've got to be careful with COVID. Yes, we have to physically distance. Yes, we have to listen to government guidelines. But even take out the words of social distancing. You don't want to social distance. This is a time more than ever to socially connect. Do it safely. Do it within the parameters of connection, for sure. Obey all the rules, for sure, for your physical health. But for your mental health this year, don't socially isolate. Don't disconnect. This is the year, by the way, that if you are really going after those extrinsic goals of helping people, connecting with people, personally growing and looking after yourself and your relationships, this is a year that you'll reach out more. So don't just have your closed little group that you'll connect with. Maybe this is a year to reach out to 1 or 2 more people, to add them in or to pull them in, and to purposefully meet those extrinsic goals by doing that, connecting with other people, desire to help others, pull people in and connect with them relationally. It's a wonderful time of opportunity. And of course, you have more independence because you're a senior. I also think it's the best, if we do it, it's the best year ever to develop these skills of connection, develop these skills of social interaction, develop skills of being brave and courageous, because next year comes different focuses. This is the year to do it. This is the year to make that effort. It's a year to develop your own character and dig deep. Dig deep into that character of who you are. You were made perfect. There's no mistake made in who you are. You were made perfect. Don't try and change who you are to reach the opinions of other people, or to try and create connection with other people who you really and truly, if you were more of who you were, you'd attract that connection in. So it's a year to develop that, and a year to dig deep. How do we do that? Well, we need to try and create the conditions in which that can happen. And we need to do life well. How do we do that? How do we keep things in order? What I mean by keeping things in order is that the conditions in which you will flourish and do well in 5th year, it takes some of the basics. We've just talked about extrinsic goals. Remember them, write them down. The desire to help other people, the desire to connect with other people, relationships, personal growth. Those 3 things, write them down. Because if we're focusing on that direction, then the basics are easier. Here's the basics. The relationships that you have are not just the relationships at home or not just in school, or relationships outside of school that are friendship based. They are also relationships at home. And typically it can be a year where we start to challenge our parental relationships, or discover our boundaries, or fight back on certain things that we think are important, like getting more independence. I often say it's not difficult at home. It's what makes the perfect home. Bottom line is, our young people are looking for independence and freedom and an element of respect. Our mothers, maternal, are looking for respect in the home. Our fathers, generally speaking, are looking for peace and quiet. And realistically, rather than grab independence and freedom, we have to meet the goals of our mother and our father, so that we absolutely get our freedom, independence, and respect. So how do we do that? Well, treating mother with respect is so incredibly important, because that's not being short in your communication style. That's not being dismissive. It's not being rude. It's not being disconnected. It's not being, shut up, you're always asking me those questions. It's extrinsic goals. It's personally developing, working on yourself, where you're going, I'm not going to be that person. I'm going to be nice and kind in the way I try and communicate with my mother, even though she asked me the same question 5 different ways, 5 different times. I'm still going to just make the decision, be responsible, ownership, accountability, responsibility. I'm going to be responsible to do things the right way. Because why? Because that actually ends up letting you feel better at the end of it. So there's an order to doing things. This is the year to challenge. Are you okay being a 25-year-old still talking to our mothers this way if we do talk to them that way? Or am I going to change that now as a 17-year-old? So the basics in relationships are incredibly important. Better your communication, better your relationships. Better your relationships at home, better your outcomes for freedom and, of course, for independence. Better your relationships at home, mum feels more respected. Better your relationships in school, teachers feel more respected. Better your relationships in school with peers creates more relationship and connection and extrinsic goals. So they're so critically important. I'm going to talk to you briefly in a moment about your sleep, your nutrition, and your exercise. If you're probably still all over the place with your sleep at the moment, don't worry, it'll change and you can bring it back. But we do need to look at what brings on good sleep and your nutrition and your exercise. So let me talk about that in just a couple of minutes, if that's okay. Your nutrition is important. You need to make sure that you're taking enough water this year. It's got to help so much with your mental wellness as well as physical wellness. Your exercise, you've got to keep up your cardiovascular exercise so that you're obviously keeping your body fit. But actually what I'm going to talk about mostly when I talk about sleep in a moment is to talk about exercise that has an impact on your mental wellness, not just on your physical wellness. I'm getting a bit theatrical here and certainly a little bit glossy, but love conquers all fear. So the fear and the negative beliefs that I talked about earlier on, which are ones that can seep in if we're living extrinsically, are ones that can be totally counteracted by being connected. And what do I mean by that? And I believe that love conquers all fear, that being kind, being caring, being courteous, being friendly, being nice, gets rid of all feelings of what other people think about me, or gets rid of all feelings of anxiousness. It's very difficult to have two human emotions at the same time. So feeling love and anxious, they don't go together, or feeling love and fear, they don't go together. We'll talk about anxiety more in a moment. Now, don't take the wrong message. This is really important. Please, I am a tech geek. I'm sitting on an Apple at the moment, Apple Mac. I've got an iPhone sitting here. I've right over here got an iPad. I am a tech geek. I love technology. But we've got to create time in our worlds to do and focus on some of the things that I've talked about just now. And in that case, what I'm going to explain to you is that we need to minimize some of these things that are in our world. Now, again, don't misunderstand the message. I'm not saying that any of these devices are bad. I'm simply saying the way in which we use them has to be boundaried, has to be clear to us. And nobody may have ever said to you what I'm going to say to you in the next 5 minutes. So I want you to hear it from me. I really dislike, even when I work here with young people and families, I really dislike where parents are fighting, excuse me, with their young people over the time that they spend on devices. Because here's what I believe. I believe if you, excuse me, I believe if you are clearly communicated to about the biology and what happens to your body with the biology of these devices, that you can literally explain to your parents. Sorry, excuse me, that you can explain to your parents that they're spending way too much time on screens. And mom, dad, do you know what these devices are doing to your brain? Don't misunderstand the message. They're great. Devices are here for the future, and it's incredibly important, and I love them. It's purely when I use them and for how long I use them. So I'm going to give you a tiny bit of science for a moment. Stick with me, please. This is the bit that you're going to fight back on, and I'm not giving out to you. I'm just being clear. Your brain and my brain basically were designed the same way. We're certainly wired the same way, even though we're all completely different and unique in our own ways. We're wired the same way. The blue part of this photograph, or purple part at the top, is your cortex. This is the rational thinking part of your brain, the decision-making part of your brain, the logical part of your brain. That's not fully developed into our mid-20s, some would say even into our 30s from a scientific perspective. I'm going to hold my hand up like this, I'm going to hold my hand up like this. This is the salmon-colored part there, which is the reptilian part of the brain. And the limbic system sits over that, which is the amygdala. When you have a panic feeling or an anger burst, right, it's because this part of your brain, which is the part where the emotions come from, because this goes right down into the central nervous system and actually down into your tummy down here, right? So when you're young and you don't want to go to school because you're anxious, it's your tummy that it affects because it produces cortisol in your brain from up here. And your amygdala, which sits up here, literally sits back almost and vibrates where it's called flipping the lid. I don't know if you've ever heard that before. where your body literally goes into a panic feeling. And we need to learn how to calm or soothe our own central nervous system, because that has a huge effect on our wellness. I'm going to talk to you about 3 different hormones that our brain produces, that our body produces, which is cortisol, which is first of all the central nervous system, sorry, the brain's stress system. So basically your brain will produce cortisol, and it's very important that it does. Cortisol is produced in the morning time to get you going for your day as soon as you pull back your curtains. But cortisol, and when it's produced, is important. So cortisol is the stress hormone. So cortisol, I'm going to talk about serotonin, which is your mood enhancement. Serotonin is basically where your mood goes up or down in any given day. Now, here's what happens. Your cortisol and your serotonin here, cortisol here, your cortisol or your stress goes up and down in a day, and so too does your serotonin. So they don't go together like this. They literally move like this. So the reality of our day is, if you're very stressed because you have an exam coming up, your cortisol is high, your mood is low, your serotonin is low. We have to find ways to organically bring that up and to balance it, okay? And if it's balanced like this, we can get on about our day. I'm going to mention one other one, which is melatonin. Melatonin is your sleep hormone, which is produced at nighttime. Your melatonin starts to rise as soon as it gets dark, and melatonin goes up just like we've talked about at night. And then as the night goes on, it comes down. Here's the reality of your day and the habits of your day, which is really important. If you're an anxious person, or if you feel a lot of pressure or stress, the single most important thing that you need is your sleep. When your melatonin rises at nighttime, and it tends to rise at nighttime with the darkness of the night. So when it gets dark, your melatonin is rising, and eventually your melatonin rises so highly, you start to feel sleepy, and when you go to bed, you're gone. Here's what causes problems. We interrupt because cortisol will stop melatonin, or certainly slow it down from rising. It literally acts like a stopper like this, okay? And one of the greatest ways cortisol is produced in your central nervous system as a young person these days, yep, you got it, screens. So again, I'm not against them, but at nighttime, for the last hour to hour and a half before you go to bed, your brain should not be looking at a screen, because your brain produces cortisol on the back of the backlight on the screen when it's been on too long. And the general scientific, there's lots of science around this, you can Google it yourself, but the general would say our brains can put up about 2 hours a day. The average for your age group is 5 to 7 hours. So we just need to be conscious of that and aware of that so that we can do something about that, if that makes sense. So what do I mean by that? Serotonin and cortisol during your day need assistance. Your melatonin rises at nighttime, roughly when you go to sleep, roughly 45 minutes to an hour after you have been in a sleep. Your body goes into a REM sleep, a deep sleep. And that's your brain replenishment sleep. That's where you're taking on loads of information in fifth year. And as a result of taking on that information and learning, it kills millions and billions of brain cells, which need to be replenished. Thank God they are every single nighttime. Your brain's an amazing organ. And what happens at nighttime is the brain literally allows the cerebral spinal fluid come in from external to your brain through your central nervous system, and it cleanses your entire brain like an octopus, and it leaves afterwards. But it'll only be able to enter if your brain constricts to allow it in, okay? And it'll only do that if you're in a REM sleep. So it's like a cleaner's going into an office at nighttime to clean up an office. They can knock on the door, but if there's no one going to open up, they can't go in to do their job. If your cerebral spinal fluid is not allowed in, and why would it not be allowed in? Because your melatonin hasn't risen high enough, and therefore you're not in a REM sleep. You could be asleep, but your brain's not in a REM sleep. Science would vary on this for up to a few hours because of the use of external stimuli like screens. And we get into a pattern of not sleeping enough. And trying to take on loads of information in fifth year and not sleeping enough is not good enough. Now you might say, but I go to bed at 11 and I sleep right through till the morning. But if you've had hours of screens, and the average is 5 to 7 hours in your day, if you've had hours of screens, and particularly the last hour and a half before you go to bed, your brain, even though your body's going to sleep, is not doing the best of what it can do. So what do? It's not difficult. It's not difficult. Decrease the stimulation in your home. What do I mean? Boundary your devices. Don't fall into a category of fighting with your parents over your screens. Be the one who says to mom and dad, you're on your screens too much. Say to mom and dad, you need to put your screens out of your bedroom at nighttime. You need to put them on charge downstairs, like I'm going to do from now on, because this weird guy came in and spoke to us about how screens were affecting our mental health. You become the psychologist that gives out to your mom and dad about that, because that's what you need to do. And as a result, only that last hour before bedtime, you're screen free. And I'm going to talk to you now about what we can do instead, which has a massive impact on your mental well-being and physical well-being. I say slow down your homes. What do I mean? Some of the greatest chats we have are when there's just no screens around in our house. You know, I've got 7 screens in our home, and as a result we have so much time where we're on screens, and I want that to be more and more time that we can just make a decision to put them all down for an hour, have a chat and have a conversation, and amazing conversations are had. Why am I saying talk, walk, read, write? Well, the reality is talking has a big impact on bringing down your cortisol and increasing your serotonin. So if you're an anxious person, that's incredibly important. Getting out for mental health walks, short walks, 20 minutes, the ideal, an hour and a half before you go to bed. Have a chat with mom or dad downstairs or with a sibling, not on the phone to somebody, because that's not the same. Have a conversation with somebody while you're walking. Is watching a Kindle. Put books beside your bed, read them, serotonin levels go up, cortisol levels come down. Really useful, and it allows melatonin to rise. If you're an arty person, write, draw, create, put a little doodle book or a sketchbook beside your bed. Again, has the same impact, hugely important. And talk about mental health in general terms like we would physical health. We've got to look after our anxiety levels. We've got to look after our stress levels, particularly in fifth year. And that doesn't just happen, you've got to make it happen. So talk, walk, read, write. They're the things that will assist your cortisol to come down. What's cortisol? Stress, anxiety. Cortisol to come down, serotonin, mood to go up. That's exactly what antidepressants do. Brings down cortisol, increases serotonin. So if you can do that organically for yourself by the 4 things I've just mentioned, and there's many more. In the area of writing, you could become more creative. You could do things like saying, I'm going to play a board game once a week. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. There's lots of different things that you can do that will assist that. I'm going to finish off by telling you a story, if that's okay, about going back to the beginning of this, where 10 seconds can massively impact our lives. I met this amazing, amazing young person going back many years called Katsiana Sivaziad. And we had met her, my wife and I, in an institution in Belarus. And she's just this amazing, gorgeous young girl who we got really kind of connected with and close to. We'd go and visit. And then as years went by, when she actually left that institution and was in a kind of like a family orphanage at one point, she used to come back on our trips and come back into the same institutions that she had come from, just loving on the kids, helping the kids, caring for the kids. And at one point, I remember her standing up in front of all of the young people in this particular place and just talking with them and encouraging them and telling them they're beautiful and they're amazing and they've got great futures ahead of them if they want them. And I remember saying to her, my gosh, you're an amazing speaker. Where did you ever learn to speak like that? And she turned around and she says, I listened to you speaking. And that was interesting to me because I used to have a terrible fear of public speaking. So I was like, oh my gosh, this kid's just amazing. And as time went by, as I said, she went back into those institutions and continued to do so and consistently went back and just loving on the girls and connecting with them and being kind and being caring for them. And as you're probably looking at these pictures, you're working it out that Katsiana Sivaziad is my eldest daughter, who I'm immensely proud of. Katya, we call her a variety of all different names, Wilson, now goes back into those same places and assists girls and helps them to encourage them and does the same in Ireland. She's now 27 years of age, and I'm incredibly proud, as I am of all of my children, of all the stuff she does. She's quite an amazing young person, and I'm very, very blessed that she's my daughter. I often say that God just had to work a little bit harder to get her to us. Why am I saying that to you? 10 seconds. She would say that her heart changed from communication to meeting us, to connecting with us, to coming to us. And many people would say, she was blessed that she met you. No, not even slightly. I think it was us that was absolutely blessed to meet her, to connect with her, and to finally have her in our family unit, because our family is a much better family with her. And I couldn't imagine it without her. And truthfully, as 10 seconds and the impact it can have, I can still remember the 10 seconds it took when I was dropping her back to the airport one time to go back to Belarus, when I rang my wife and said, this is just like dropping Kelly Jo or Georgia or Keith. This is just like dropping one of our kids to the airport. This isn't right. What are we going to do about that? And that led to a conversation of, would you like to stay? And here we are now with a 27-year-old in our home. 10 seconds can massively impact. And my challenge to you going into fifth year this year is, will you decide to let that happen? Will you make the decision that will impact you now for the next entire 12 months of your time in the fifth year, to embrace it, to understand that the stresses will come, the stresses through life will come, the boulders will appear in that river, But you do have the opportunity, rather than to get into bed and make plain excuses and denial, you have the opportunity to own it, to be accountable, to be responsible, to ask for help, to get the assistance that will get you around the boulder and to keep going on that journey. And I believe the answer is yes, you can do that. And I'm asking you to do that. I'm going to finish on that, if that's okay. I'm going to leave you with a little video, which always I love watching and I love showing, and it's just a little encouragement, and I hope in some ways has an encouragement for the year ahead, which I hope is an amazing year for you. I'm going to show this video and then I'm going to come back to you for just a tiny wrap up and then we're done.
I think we all need a pep talk. The world needs you to stop being boring. Yeah, you. Boring is easy. Everybody can be boring, but you're gooder than that. Life is not a game, people. Life isn't a cereal either. Well, it is a cereal. And if life is a game, aren't we all on the same team? I mean, really, right? I'm on your team, be on my team. This is life, people. You got air coming through your nose. You got heartbeat. That means it's time to do something. A poem. Two roads diverged in the woods, and I took the road less traveled. It hurt, man! Really bad. Rocks, thorns, and glass. The parts broke. Wah! Not cool, Robert Frost. But what if there really were two paths? I won't be the one that leads to awesome. It's like that dude Jordan said, don't stop believing, unless you dream stupid. Then you should get a better dream. I think that's how it goes. Get a better dream and keep going. Keep going, and keep going. Will Michael Jordan have quit? Well, he didn't quit. No, he retired. Yeah, yes, he retired. But before that, in high school, what if he quit when he didn't make the team? He would have never made Space Jam. And I love Space Jam. What will be your Space Jam? What will you create will make the world awesome? Nothing if you keep sitting there. That's why I'm talking to you today. This is your time. This is my time. It's our time. We can make every day better for each other. If we're all on the same team, let's start acting like it. We got work to do. We can cry about it, or we can dance about it. We were made to be awesome. Let's get out there. I don't know everything. I'm just a kid. I do know this. So everybody's due to give the world a reason to dance. So get to it. You've just been pep talked. Create something that will make the world awesome. Play ball.
Create a world that makes something awesome. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to leave this with you as well to have a quick look at, because I hope that this year is a year that you make the decision to raise an eyebrow. I came across this today and I thought it was great. So I hope this year is a year that helps you raise an eyebrow. So yes, I hope this is a year that raises raises an eyebrow for you. Thanks so much, guys, for listening in to what I have to share with you. I really hope that it's been beneficial. I hope it's been interesting. I hope that some of it has been hopefully something that you might be able to take into the year ahead with you. I'm hugely grateful to you for listening in for the last little while. If you have any questions or anything on your mind, please feel free to contact us. Mr. Freer will be able to give you contact details if you so wish. And I'd just like to say thank you to Mr. Freer and to all your staff in St. Andrews for the phenomenal job that they do to connect with you guys, and also to think outside the box and even to do things like this. I'm very grateful for it. It does seem unusual that we're talking this way and that normally we would be face to face, but I know that every time I spend in St. Andrews is always a time that I feel very privileged, because I always come away with a feeling like you're very kind, caring and courteous to external speakers. So thanks for doing that, and thanks for being that way, because that's not the way it always is when people like me come to schools to talk with you. So take care and God bless you, and I hope that this year is genuinely an extraordinary year for you and goes incredibly well. And take care and God bless, and I hope to see you sometime in the near future. God bless. Bye bye.